My 3 sons left me alone with a stranger when pneumonia struck, claiming it was more practical. I am Margaret, 72 years old, a widow, and the owner of everything they covet. What they don't know is that my mobile has the direct line to the bank manager. It all started with a dry cough that I thought was just due to the London dust. I'm stubborn, you know. Always have been. You raise children, keep a house, and endure life's knocks. You think you're made of iron, but the body eventually sends the bill. When the fever spiked and I couldn't catch my breath, I had no choice but to ring Robert, my eldest. "Mum, you need to look after yourself," he said over the phone, with that voice of someone signing paperwork in a corporate office. "I'll let James and Mark know. We'll come over." I felt such immense relief. I thought, my boys are coming to care for me. I imagined my 3 sons, those bearded men I had once rocked to sleep making tea, plumping my pillows, just as I had done for them when they had measles or chickenpox. But reality, my child, is a bucket of ice-cold water. They came, yes. The 3 of them sat in my drawing room with worried faces, not for me, but for the inconvenience. The doctor had been clear. It was severe pneumonia. I needed absolute rest, medication at precise times, good food, and, most importantly, I couldn't be left alone at night in case I struggled to breathe. I was sitting in my armchair with a shawl over my shoulders, feeling my chest wheeze like an old kettle. I looked at Robert, at James, and at Mark. "Look, Mum," started Robert, who always took the lead. "The situation is delicate. We've had a chat outside." "You had a chat?" My voice came out weak. "Yes, well, you see, James's wife is pregnant. His flat in Clapham is small and has stairs. You can't stay there." I looked at James. He averted his gaze, pretending to adjust the expensive watch on his wrist. "And at my place, Mum?" "You know how it is," said Mark, the youngest. "We work all day. The children are a handful. There's no one to keep an eye on you. And I travel a lot for business," Robert completed. "So we decided what's best." "You decided?" They hadn't even asked me. "We're going to hire a carer," Robert decreed. "It's better than shuffling you between houses. It's more professional. We'll split the cost, you stay in your own comfort, and everyone has peace of mind." I felt a hot tear run down, but I wiped it quickly. I didn't want them to see my weakness. It wasn't about the money. Thanks to God and the hard work my late husband and I put in, money wasn't a problem. It was the gesture. "A stranger?" I asked. "A professional, Mum." "Don't be difficult," James said, already grabbing his car keys. "We've contacted the agency. She starts tomorrow. Her name is Sarah." They left 5 minutes later. They didn't even make me a cup of tea. I stayed in that enormous living room, listening to the silence and the wheezing of my chest. My boys treated me like an antique piece of furniture that needed to be stored in a warehouse, but since I didn't fit in their homes, they hired someone to dust me off. The next day, this Sarah arrived. She was a simple woman with a shy smile and rough hands. I was ready to hate her. After all, she was living proof that my sons had no time for me. I wanted to be grumpy. I wanted to send her away, but the pneumonia knocked me off my feet, and it was Sarah's hand, not my son's, that held the soup spoon to my mouth. "Mrs. Margaret, you need to eat to keep your strength up," she would say with the patience of a saint. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Do you know how many times Robert came to see me? None. He sent messages on WhatsApp. "Mum, everything all right? Need anything?" "Sarah's money has been transferred." James rang twice in a rush, saying life was madness. Mark sent a photo of the grandchildren in Cornwall on a bank holiday weekend. On the beach, while his mother fought to breathe. "Who changed my bed linen?" Sarah. "Who ran to the chemist at 3 a.m. when my fever spiked?" Sarah. "Who sat on the edge of the bed and listened to my stories of the past so I wouldn't feel lonely?" Sarah. 6 months passed. 6 months, my son. The pneumonia left, but it left a scar on my soul. I was physically weak, but my mind was more lucid than ever. During those 6 months, I observed. Sarah told me about her life. She was raising 2 children alone, taking 2 buses and the tube to come care for me, never complaining. And my sons, raised on silver spoons, with brand new cars, couldn't drive 30 minutes to see if their mother was alive. On a sunny Tuesday, I woke up feeling different. The air entered my lungs clean. I got out of bed alone, went to the mirror, and looked at that old woman with white hair. Enough, Margaret, I said to myself. Pity party is over. I went to the kitchen. Sarah was there brewing fresh coffee. The smell was wonderful. Mrs. Margaret, you got up on your own? That's wonderful. Her smile was genuine, truer than any "I love you" my sons had said in recent years. Sarah, my dear, sit here with me. We're going to have coffee together at the table. No more of me in bed and you standing up. She hesitated, but Saturday, we ate toast with butter and talked. I thanked her. I thanked her for being the daughter I never had, while the sons I birthed turned their backs. You paid me, Mrs. Margaret. It's my job, she said humbly. Work is one thing, care is another. You gave me what money can't buy, and my sons, they think money solves everything. I looked at the clock on the wall. 10 a.m., the time the bank opened. My sons thought I was old, senile, and dependent. They thought that by hiring Sarah, they had ridded themselves of the problem and guaranteed their inheritance remained intact. After all, Mum doesn't spend anything. They forgot one thing. Who built the fortune was me. Who has the signature on the account is me. And who has the power to decide who deserves what is me. I stood up from the table, firm, legs steady. Sarah, give me my mobile, please. Are you going to ring Mr. Robert to say you're better? She asked innocently. I gave a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It was the smile of someone with a plan. No, my dear. Robert will know at the right time. Now, I'm going to make a much more important call. I dialed the number I knew by heart. It rang twice. Hello, private banking. Good morning. A solicitous male voice answered. Good morning, Richard. It's Margaret. Mrs. Margaret, it's been so long. How can I help? Do you need an investment adjustment? I took a deep breath, feeling the power return to my hands. No, Richard. I need an urgent meeting, and I need you to call the bank solicitor as well. Solicitor? Has something serious happened? It has, Richard. It happened that I had pneumonia, and the fever burned away my patience. I want to make drastic alterations to my will and the joint accounts. Today, I hung up the phone and looked at the photo of my 3 sons on the living room shelf. They were smiling, happy, at a BBQ where I had paid for the meat. I took the frame and turned it face down against the wood. Now let's see who's going to need a carer, I whispered to the empty room. The tables had turned, and they didn't even imagine the pieces were already moving. Leaving the house after 6 months closeted away isn't just crossing a threshold, it's like being born again. While I chose my outfit, my hands trembled slightly not from weakness, but from anticipation. I opened the wardrobe and ignored the house dresses, those floral grandmotherly ones my sons loved seeing me wear, because they reinforced the idea that I was harmless. I went straight to the back, where the pieces of Margaret the businesswoman were kept. I pulled out an impeccable beige linen suit I hadn't worn since my husband's memorial service. The scent of lavender brought back memories of a time when my word was law. Mrs. Margaret, are you really going out? Sarah's voice appeared at the bedroom door, full of worry. The doctor said to take it slow. I turned to her. Sarah was wearing her apron, hands damp from washing dishes. She had dark circles under her eyes from not sleeping well, worried about her own bills, I imagined. My dear, the doctor looked after my lungs. Now I need to look after my life, I replied, buttoning the blazer. Call a taxi for me, please. A black cab, one with plenty of space. But the boys, Mr. Robert, he won't like it if he knows you went out alone. I gave a short, dry laugh. Robert doesn't own me, Sarah. And besides, you're coming with me. Me? But what about the house? Lunch? The house isn't going anywhere. And today, we are lunching out. Take off that apron. Put on your best clothes. We're going for a ride. Seeing Sarah get ready was the first lesson of the day. She didn't have best clothes. She put on clean jeans and a simple white blouse, the newest she had. That hurt me. While my grandsons wore trainers that cost her monthly salary, she didn't have a going-out outfit. I noted this in my mental list. The list was growing. The journey to the bank was silent. I watched London through the window of the cab. Streets had changed, shops closed, new buildings rose up. Life had continued while I coughed in bed. But one thing doesn't change. Money opens doors that love often fails to unlock. When we arrived at the branch in the city, I didn't go to the standard queue. I went straight to the side glass revolving door and rang the bell. The security guard looked at me askance for a second, until Richard, my manager, appeared running into the lobby, adjusting his tie. "Mrs. Margaret, what a wonderful surprise!" He opened the door personally. "Please, come in." We entered his office. Cold air conditioning, the smell of espresso, leather armchairs that hugged the body. Richard looked at Sarah with curiosity. "This is Sarah Mai." I hesitated. I didn't want to say carer. "My trusted personal assistant. She stays." Richard nodded respectfully. "Of course, Mrs. Margaret. You mentioned your will on the phone. I was worried." "Richard, let's skip the socializing. I want to see the statements. All of them. Investment funds, savings, stocks, the warehouse rents, everything. And I want to know who accessed or tried to access this information in the last 6 months." The manager went pale. He typed on his computer, the silence of the room broken only by the clack-clack of the keyboard. He printed a sheaf of papers and placed them in front of me. I began to read. My eyes, thank God, still worked well with reading glasses. The numbers were good. The fortune my late George and I built selling pies, then opening the bakery, then buying property, was all there. Solid, powerful. But then I reached the last page, the report of access attempts and requests. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth, worse than any medicine I took for pneumonia. "What is this here, Richard?" I pointed with a dark red fingernail to a line dated 3 months ago. Richard swallowed hard. "Well, it's just that your son, Mr. Robert, came here. He brought some medical documentation." "What documentation?" "A preliminary report. He was asking about the process for deputyship power of attorney. He wanted to know how to move the accounts in case you were considered, lacking capacity." The air vanished for a second, but it wasn't pneumonia. It was the punch in the stomach from betrayal. While I fought to breathe in bed, feverish, my eldest son wasn't worried about holding my hand. He was at the bank asking how to get his hands on the money if I went senile. He was rooting for my incapacity. I looked at Sarah. Her mouth was open, shocked. "Mrs. Margaret, they wouldn't have the heart," she whispered. "They have, my dear." "Greed has no kinship," I replied, feeling a cold, calculating anger take over my chest. That anger was the best fuel I could have. I turned back to Richard. "And what did you tell him?" "I said that without a court order or your presence, nothing could be done." He was quite insistent, said it was for your own good, to pay your medical expenses. "Expenses that my pension already covered with plenty to spare," I retorted. "Richard, pay close attention. As of today, the viewing access Robert had on the joint company account is cut. But Mrs. Margaret, he manages the logistics side. Cut. Let him come ask me if he needs to buy a paperclip. And there's more. I want to transfer the immediate liquidity to a private trust, one of those offshore ones that not even the Pope knows exists. Asset protection." Richard understood quickly. "We can do that, but you know this will generate an alert for them, right? They'll notice the money has disappeared from the main current account." I smiled. It was exactly what I wanted. Let them notice. I want them to feel the chill down their spine, thinking the well has run dry. But that's just the beginning. I asked Richard for something else. I want the detailed statements of the additional credit cards I gave to the 3 of them. It's been a while since I looked. I trusted them. I said, "Use for emergencies for the children." Richard printed them. I took the sheet. Emergencies. Mark, £800 at an imported wine merchant. James, £1,200 on parts for his Jaguar. Robert, £3,000 at a resort in Marbella. Date, the bank holiday weekend I was having fever hallucinations. I felt a tear run down, but this time I didn't wipe it away. I let it fall onto the paper, staining the line of the resort expense. It was the last tear they would get from me. "Sarah," I called out without taking my eyes off the paper. "Ma'am? Do you have debts?" She was startled by the direct question. "Mrs. Margaret, we always do, don't we? The mortgage, the youngest one's braces. It's a struggle. How much? To clear everything and sleep soundly." "Oh, Mrs. Margaret, it's a lot of money. About £5,000 maybe. I'm paying it off slowly." I looked at the paper on the desk. 5,000. Almost the amount Robert spent in a week in Spain while I was dying. "Richard," my voice sounded firm as steel, "prepare a banker's draft now. £5,000, payable to Sarah Smith." "Mrs. Margaret, no, I can't accept. Sarah jumped from the chair, eyes wide. It's too much money. I only did my duty. I held her hand. Her hands were rough, hands that work. My son's hands were soft, hands that ask. Sarah, be quiet and accept. This isn't a gift, it's justice. My son spent this playing around. You spent your life caring for mine. Accept it, or I fire you. She cried. She sobbed right there in the bank manager's office, and I felt alive, for the first time in years. My money was serving something real, not maintaining the appearances of a perfect family that didn't exist. When we left the bank, with the check in Sarah's handbag and my new financial structure designed, I was no longer the sick old lady. I felt like a general who had just inspected the terrain before the battle. Where to now, Mrs. Margaret? Home? Sarah asked, wiping her eyes, still stunned. No, to the department store. I need to buy a new mobile, one that no one in the family has the passcode for. And afterwards, we are going to Mr. Sterling's law firm. Richard looks after the money, but Sterling will look after the law. As we walked along the pavement, my old mobile rang in my bag. It was Robert. He must have received the notification of some movement or block. I looked at the screen, son Robert calling. I let it ring. Once, twice, 5 times. Aren't you going to answer? Sarah asked. No, I replied, feeling the sun on my face. Let him sweat a little. He needs to learn that Mum isn't a 24-hour cash machine. Sometimes the system goes offline. I had a plan forming. It wouldn't be a fight of screaming and insults. I am a lady of class. My revenge would be served like a home-cooked meal, hot, well-seasoned, and impossible to refuse. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted, the inheritance, but not in the way they imagined. Sarah, do you know how to cook a proper Sunday roast with all the trimmings? I asked as we got into the taxi. I do, yes. You love it. Excellent. Next Sunday I'm going to call a family meeting. I'm going to say I have an important announcement about my health and the assets. They'll come running like flies to honey. And what are you going to announce? I smiled, looking at the city landscape passing quickly. I'm going to announce the beginning of the end of the free ride, my dear, and you are going to have a front row seat. The phone rang again. It was James. I ignored it. The game had begun, and I had the best cards up my sleeve. Cards they didn't even know existed in the deck. They thought I was the past. They were going to discover I am their future, or the lack thereof. Sunday dawned with that beautiful sun entering through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust dancing in the air. In the old days, this was the day I woke up early to make scones, waiting for my grandchildren to arrive shouting, "Granny!" Today I woke up early for another reason. I had a banquet to serve, but the main course wouldn't be the food, it would be doubt. While Sarah was peeling potatoes with a fast and precise rhythm, I finished seasoning the beef. The smell of roasting meat and Yorkshire puddings taking shape in the oven took over the whole house. It was a smell of childhood, of family, of welcome, but today it was a trap. Mrs. Margaret, are you sure you want to use the imported porcelain, the wedding set? Sarah asked, wiping her hands on her apron, eyes wide. She knew I hadn't taken those plates out of the cupboard in 20 years. I am, my daughter. Today is a special occasion. Today is the day my children discover that the old woman here still knows how to bite. I set the table with military precision. Polished silver cutlery. I polished it myself the night before, feeling the anger give strength to my weak arms. Crystal glasses and linen napkins. I placed the name cards, head of the table empty. I would sit on the side, as I always did, but on my right side, the place of honor, I set the place for Sarah. The phone rang shortly before midday. It was Robert. Mum, we're arriving. Traffic is terrible. Listen, something strange happened. I went to use the company card at the petrol station, and it was declined. Did you forget to pay the bill? His voice had that tone of accusation disguised as worry, typical of him. I took a deep breath, holding back the laughter that wanted to escape. Hello, my son. How odd. Must be the banking system, right? You know technology, always failing. Come quickly. The roast will get cold. I hung up without explaining. The seed was planted. They arrived in a convoy, as always. Big, noisy cars, parking on my driveway as if they owned the street. Robert, James, and Mark entered the hall bringing a gust of agitation. The daughters-in-law came behind. eyes scanning the house as if they were auction valuers, checking if the paintings were still on the wall. My grandchildren, poor things, entered running with their eyes on their phone screens. They barely gave me a peck on the cheek. "Mom, that smells amazing," Mark shouted, heading for the kitchen. "Did you hire a caterer?" "No, my son, it was Sarah and I helped," I replied, appearing in the doorway of the immaculate living room in my new navy blue silk dress. They stopped. Silence fell in the room for a second. They weren't used to seeing me dressed up inside the house. They were used to the Margaret in a nightgown, coughing, smelling of medicine. The Margaret standing in front of them wore French perfume and red lipstick. "You look great," said James, suspicious. "The doctor cleared me to leave the bed. The doctor cleared me to live. James, let's go to the table." When they reached the dining room and saw the table set with the wedding china, the shock was visible. They looked at each other. "Is she going to announce she's dying?" their eyes said. "Greed shines in the eyes of those waiting for an inheritance, my child, and it shines brighter when they think the end is near." Everyone sat down, the daughters-in-law whispering. Robert sat down, picked up his napkin, and looked at the empty chair on my right. "Who's coming? The priest? The solicitor?" He tried to make a joke, but he was nervous about the blocked card. At that moment, Sarah entered the room bringing the platter of roast potatoes. She was going to serve and return to the kitchen as always. "Sarah," my voice echoed firmly, "leave the platter there. Sit down." She froze. "Sit down, my dear. Today you lunch with the family. After all, you cared for me more than anyone at this table in the last 6 months. The place on my right is yours." The noise of a fork hitting the porcelain plate was the only sound. Robert's wife, a woman who never washed a sock in her life, made a face of disgust that nearly dislocated her jaw. "Mum, with all due respect," started Robert, his face turning red. "Sarah is staff. It's not appropriate to mix things. We have family matters to discuss." "Exactly, Robert. Family matters. And since Sarah knows more about my health, my medication, and my routine than you do, she stays. Sit, Sarah. That is an order." Sarah sat, shrinking, but I held her hand across the table. Her hand trembled. Mine did not. Lunch began tensely. No one praised the food, although it was divine. They ate quickly, wanting to get to the point. I chewed slowly, savoring every bite of beef and every morsel of their discomfort. "So, Mum," James cleared his throat. Robert mentioned the card. "My additional one didn't work at the garage yesterday either. Did you change something?" I made an innocent face, that face of a confused old lady they love to underestimate. "Ah, my sons, I went to the bank this week." "You went to the bank alone?" Mark almost choked on his drink. "Not alone, with Sarah." I smiled at her. "We went to chat with Richard. You know how it is? I was sick for a long time. The accounts gathered dust. Richard told me something curious." I put down my cutlery, clasped my hands, and looked at each of them. "He said the emergency reserve account was almost empty, the one I gave you access to. And look how funny, I didn't have any emergency that needed that money. Sarah paid for the medicines with my pension." Robert went pale. James started sweating on his forehead. "Mum, look," Robert tried to use his manager voice. "The market is tough, you know? We had some unforeseen issues. It was a loan. We were going to put it back." "A loan?" I raised an eyebrow. "How interesting. And the resort in Marbella, Robert? Was that a loan?" "It was a business conference. I heard coconut water there costs an arm and a leg." The silence at the table became deafening. He knew. He realized I knew. "Who told you that?" he hissed, looking with hatred at Sarah. "It was you, wasn't it, poisoning my mother's mind?" "Don't raise your voice at her." I slammed my hand on the table. The crystal glasses vibrated. "No one told me. I saw it. I read it. Bank statements. They don't lie, Robert. Unlike ungrateful sons." The daughters-in-law stopped eating. The grandchildren, sensing the heavy atmosphere, put down their phones. "I blocked everything," I said with the calm of someone commenting on the weather forecast. "Cards, access, passwords. From now on, the gravy train has stopped." "Mom, you can't do this." James stood up, indignant. "I have car payments. I relied on that limit." "Sell the car," I replied coldly. "Or take the bus. Sarah takes the bus every day and never died from it. In fact, it builds character." "You are out of your mind," said Robert, standing up too. He looked like a cornered animal. "This is the effect of the medication. You aren't thinking straight. I knew it. I told the doctor." "Told him what, Robert?" I cut across him, looking deep into his eyes. "Said I needed interdiction? To be put under the court of protection?" The words fell on the table like a bomb. The wives gasped. They didn't know I had discovered his visit to the bank with the medical report. It was the final blow of that round. Robert opened his mouth and closed it soundlessly. He realized I was 10 steps ahead. "I'm not mad, my son. I am disappointed. And disappointment clears the mind in a way you can't imagine." I stood up from the table, sovereign. "Lunch is over. Dessert would be trifle, but I've lost my taste for sweets. You may leave. And please, don't forget to take the gifts I left on the hall table." They left the table stunned, humiliated, not knowing what to do. No one dared to answer back. Maternal authority, when reclaimed, has an ancestral weight. On the way out, on the sideboard, were 3 large white envelopes, one for each son. I watched from the window as they opened the envelopes out on the pavement, anxious, thinking perhaps it was money, a last kindness from silly Mum. It wasn't money. It was color photocopies, enlarged, of the bank statements with their spending highlighted in neon yellow highlighter, and with them a copy of the contract of the new company I opened on Friday. A family holding company where I am the sole director for life. I saw Robert crumple the paper in anger. I saw James kick the car tire. I saw Mark cry, perhaps from shame, perhaps from fear of his wife. I went back to the kitchen. Sarah was washing the dishes, crying softly. "Mrs. Margaret, they are going to hate you, and they'll hate me even more. I'm scared." I went to her and dried her hands. "Let them hate, Sarah. Their hatred is the price of my freedom. They thought they could bury me before my time, but they forgot that I am a seed." I looked at the pile of dirty dishes. "Leave that. Tomorrow we hire a cleaner. You've been promoted." "Promoted to what, Mrs. Margaret?" I gave a mischievous smile. The first true smile I'd given in years. "My business partner." They saw the statements, but they didn't see the last page of the contract that was in the envelope, the page that says, "Who will manage my properties from now on?" The war was declared, and I had just won the first battle without firing a single shot, just serving roast beef and indigestible truths. But they wouldn't give up so easily. Robert was proud. I knew he would try a counterattack. What he didn't know is that I had saved my most dangerous trump card for the next meeting, my late husband's diary, containing secrets that could destroy not just their bank accounts, but the reputations they so cherished. The silence that followed Sunday lunch lasted exactly 3 days. That was how long it took for the penny to drop and for the bills to become due. If on Sunday they left stunned, on Wednesday they returned furious. But anger, my son, is the weapon of the weak when they lose control. Calm is the weapon of the one holding the pen. I was on the veranda watering my ferns. Sarah, now dressed in smart office clothes we bought together on Monday, was beside me reviewing the diary. She was no longer just the carer changing sheets. She was learning to care for what really mattered, the legacy. "Mrs. Margaret," the porter buzzed. "They're coming up," Sarah said, voice a little trembling. "And they brought someone with them." "Let them come up, my dear. Is the coffee on the table?" "Yes." "And Mr. Sterling has arrived?" "He's in the study waiting for your signal." I smiled. Everything was timed. The doorbell rang with urgency, as if the house were on fire. Sarah opened the door. In walked Robert, James, and Mark, but this time they didn't bring their wives. They brought a tall man in a gray suit and leather briefcase, looking like someone who charges dearly by the hour. And to my surprise and profound disappointment, they also brought Dr. Harrison, an old psychiatrist, a friend of my late husband. "Mum, we need to talk now." Robert entered without asking permission, barreling past Sarah. "This is Mr. Bridges, our solicitor, and you know Dr. Harrison." I continued watering the fern, back turned to them. "Good afternoon to you too, my sons. Manners were left at the door, I see." "We don't have time for ironies, Mrs. Margaret," said their lawyer with an arrogant voice. "The situation is grave. Your sons are very worried about your sudden change of behavior and dissipation of assets." I turned slowly, putting down the watering can. I wiped my hands on an embroidered tea towel. Dissipation? Is that what you call it when I stop paying for trips to Disney and expensive wines? Mrs. Margaret, intervened Dr. Harrison with that gentle voice one uses with children. Robert told me you've been having episodes excessive spending, fits of rage, firing family from the business. This could be a sequela of pneumonia, lack of oxygen to the brain. We need to do an evaluation for your own good. I looked at Harrison, a man who dined in my house so many times, who ate my trifle, now lending himself to this charade to help my sons have me committed. For my own good, Harrison? Or for the good of their pockets? I asked, walking to the main armchair in the room and sitting like a queen on her throne. Mom, just sign the papers. James exploded nervously, biting his nails. We take over temporary administration. You rest, stay with Sarah here playing house, and we ensure Dad's empire doesn't go bankrupt in your hands. Dad's empire? I repeated, tasting the bitterness of those words. You always forget the empire was built with his sweat and my savings. While he sold, I administered. Did you think money grew on trees? You are in no condition, shouted Robert. You gave a check for £5,000 to the maid. That is proof of insanity. Sarah shrank into the corner of the room. Assistant, I corrected with a voice like thunder. She is my assistant and partner, and £5,000 is less than you spent at that resort while I was in bed. Robert, the difference is, she earned it. You stole it. That is slander. Their lawyer stepped forward. We are going to file for temporary deputyship tomorrow. Dr. Harrison's report will attest to cognitive incapacity. You will lose control of everything via the courts. It is better to make an amicable agreement now. It was the moment. They had played their final card. Threat, intimidation, twisted medicine, and law. They expected the frightened old lady to cry and sign. I rang the small silver bell on the coffee table. The door to my study opened. Out came Mr. Sterling, my solicitor for 30 years, a man who knew every penny of that family, accompanied by 2 interns carrying thick files. The color drained from Robert's face. Their lawyer, Mr. Bridges, took a step back. They knew each other. Mr. Sterling was a legend in the city. Good afternoon, gentlemen, said Sterling, adjusting his glasses. I heard the words slander and deputyship. I think we need to clarify some legal points. What is he doing here? Stuttered Mark. He is here to show you I began. Mrs. Margaret, please. Mr. Sterling opened the files on the coffee table. Firstly, gentlemen, Mrs. Margaret is not dissipating assets. She is carrying out a corporate restructuring that is perfectly legal. In fact, the George and Margaret family holdings was dissolved last Friday. Dissolved? The 3 shouted in unison. Yes, and all assets were capitalized into a new company, Phoenix Holdings, of which Mrs. Margaret is the sole shareholder with voting rights. You can't do that. We are heirs, their lawyer tried to argue, but looked less confident now. Potential beneficiaries of a will that can be changed at any time. Yes. Sterling smiled, a shark smile. But Mrs. Margaret has the right to dispose of her assets as she sees fit while alive. And regarding your potential inheritance? Well, she has ring-fenced everything into a trust. You will receive dividends if there is profit, and only when she passes away. Until then, no one touches a brick without her signature. And there is more, I interrupted, standing up slowly. I went to the shelf and took a black leather-bound notebook, old and worn, George's diary. You think your father was a fool? I asked, stroking the cover of the diary. George loved you, but he knew the nature of each of you. I opened a page marked with a red ribbon. March 12, 2018, I began to read aloud. Today, Robert asked me for money again. Said it was to invest, but I found out he changed his car. James hasn't appeared at the bakery for weeks. Mark only cares about parties. I am afraid, Margaret. I am afraid that when I go, they will leave you with nothing. If that happens, promise me you will use Clause 4 of our partnership agreement. I closed the diary with a dry snap. Clause 4, explained Mr. Sterling, allows the remaining partner, Mrs. Margaret, to exclude minority partners you from administration in case of unjustified breach of trust. The abandonment of Mrs. Margaret during severe pneumonia, configured as material and emotional abandonment, is the perfect justification. We have statements from the concierge, medical records, and of course the testimony of Miss Sarah. The silence in the room was absolute. Dr. Harrison, the psychiatrist, put his pen in his pocket and started walking towards the door stealthily. I didn't know these details," murmured the doctor. "Margaret, forgive me, I was misled." "Go with God, Harrison, and don't appear here for coffee ever again," I said without looking at him. He left. Their lawyer also looked like he wanted to vanish. I was left alone in the room with my 3 sons and my team. They were destroyed not because they felt remorse, but because they lost power. The easy money was gone. The status of being sons of the bakery owners had turned to dust. "Mom," Mark started to cry, "are you going to leave us on the street?" "I have children, your grandchildren." "My grandchildren will have everything. School fees paid, health, comfort. I will pay the schools and health care directly. Not a penny will pass through your hands. The allowance for the parents is over." "Want money? Work. The shops are there. If you want, you can apply for manager vacancies. You will clock in, have a lunch hour, and a market salary. If you don't want to, look for a job elsewhere." Robert, who had his head down, raised his gaze. There was hate there, but there was also fear. He realized I wasn't the mother who patted him on the head anymore. "And her?" He pointed to Sarah. "What does she get out of this? You're giving everything to the maid?" I walked over to Sarah and put my hand on her shoulder. "Sarah will manage Phoenix Holdings. She will oversee your work if you decide to work. She has my power of attorney. If you want to ask for a day off, it's her you'll ask." James's jaw dropped. "You are making the carer our boss?" "I am putting the person who cared for my life to care for what sustains your lives. It is the most poetic justice I found." "This is humiliating," shouted Robert. Humiliating was staying 6 months waiting for a son to give me a glass of water and receiving a stranger instead. My voice came out low but cutting like a razor. "You chose absence. Now deal with the presence of the one who stayed." I pointed to the door. "The meeting is over. Mr. Sterling will send the new employment contracts to you tomorrow. Anyone who doesn't sign is out of the company and loses the right to future dividends. Good day." They left dragging their feet, defeated. They seemed smaller than when they entered. The weight of frustrated greed curved their backs. When the door slammed, my legs trembled. I sat on the sofa, letting out the air I hadn't realized I was holding. Sarah came running with a glass of sugar water. "Mrs. Margaret, you were a giant, but they won't accept my leadership." I drank the water and looked at her with tenderness. "They have no choice, my dear. The pocket is the most sensitive organ of the human body. They will complain, they will curse behind your back, but they will obey, because without me and now without you they are nothing." I looked out the window. The sun was setting, dyeing the London sky purple and orange. "But you know this isn't over, right?" said Mr. Sterling, closing his file. "Robert is vengeful. He will try to find a loophole. He will try to turn the grandchildren against you." "I know, Sterling." I took a deep breath, feeling strength return. But now I am no longer alone in a sickbed. I am standing, and I have a new army. I picked up my phone. There was a message from my eldest granddaughter, Sophie, Robert's daughter, who was 18. "Granny. Heard Dad shouting on the phone. Said you went mad, but wanted to say I miss you. Can I come see you without Dad knowing?" I smiled. Money controls greedy sons, but love could still save the grandchildren. "Sarah, prepare the guest room. I think we're going to have visitors this weekend. But this time, visitors coming out of love, not obligation." I had won the financial and legal battle. Now began the hardest battle, rebuilding the family, skipping a rotten generation to save the next. And I had a plan for that too, a plan that involved transforming the old bakery into something much bigger, something that would unite me, Sarah, and my grandchildren in a project that would leave my sons dying of envy. Time is the master of reason, my child. They say it cures everything, but I say it merely puts everything on its proper shelf. 6 months have passed since that Sunday lunch where I served roast beef on fine china. Today my house no longer smells of medicine and loneliness. It smells of fresh coffee, office paper, and, principally, dignity. I woke up early, as I do every day now, not from insomnia, but from a will to live. I went down to the kitchen and found Sarah already dressed for work, but not in a carer's uniform. She wore a navy blue trouser suit, elegant, and was speaking firmly on the phone. "No, Robert, the flour supplier will only be paid on Friday. It is company policy. If you promised earlier, you will have to explain to them that your signature is invalid without my counter-signature." She hung up and looked at me, breaking into that smile that lit up the room. "Good morning, Mrs. Margaret. Mr. Robert is trying to bypass cash flow again." "Let him try." "Sarah, it's good he exercises his creativity to solve problems without using my checkbook." I sat at the table. Life had changed from water to wine. Phoenix Holdings was flying. Sarah, who would have thought, had a natural talent for business. What she used to economize at the supermarket when she was poor, she now used to negotiate million-pound contracts. She valued every penny because she knew how much it cost to earn it. And my sons? Ah, my sons. At 8 a.m. sharp, the driver honked, but not to take me, to take Sarah to the company HQ. I decided to go along today. I wanted to see the gears turning with my own eyes. We arrived at the office, situated in the old building of our industrial bakery, now renovated. As soon as I entered, I saw James. He was at reception, but not sitting waiting. He was dealing with a client complaining about a delivery delay. "Sir, I apologize profusely," said James, sweating, without the arrogance of before. "We had a logistical issue, but I will personally track your order." He saw me enter, straightened his back, embarrassed. "Good morning, Mum," he said, lowering his head. "Good morning, James. Nice tie. Bought with your salary?" "Bought it, Mum." 3 installments on the card. I nodded. That was worth more than any expensive gift he had ever given me with my own money. He was learning the value of earning. We went up to the meeting room. The glass wall allowed a view of the main floor. I saw Mark at a desk full of spreadsheets, arguing with the marketing team. He looked tired but focused. No more time to spend the afternoon at the club. And Robert? Robert was in Sarah's office standing, while she was sitting. I entered the room. "Mum, what are you doing here?" Robert asked, surprised. He looked older, with some gray hairs that dye no longer hid. The stress of real work ages a person, doesn't it? "Came to see my partner and see how my employee is getting on." Robert clenched his jaw. His pride was still there, wounded, bleeding, but he had nowhere to run. Mr. Sender. Sterling had tied everything up so well that if he resigned, he would lose the right to future dividends. He was trapped in the snare his own greed created. To have the inheritance money one day, he needed to work to build it today. "We are closing the quarterly balance," said Sarah, professional. Robert managed to renegotiate the old debt on the lorries. "Did a good job." I saw my son's eyes shine not for money, but for recognition. For the first time in years, someone praised him for something he actually did, not for the surname he carried. "Thanks," he murmured dryly, but sincerely. "You see, Robert," I said, sitting in the chair next to Sarah, "work doesn't kill. What kills is ingratitude." It was at that moment the door opened, and a whirlwind of curly hair entered. Granny! It was Sophie, my granddaughter, Robert's daughter. She ran and hugged me tight. Then, to everyone's surprise, she hugged Sarah too. "Hi, Sarah. Brought the sketches you asked for the new youth brand logo." Robert looked from his daughter to the ex-carer, confused. "You are working with Sarah, Sophie?" "I am, Dad," Sophie replied firmly. "Granny is paying for my design degree, but Sarah gave me an internship. I'm learning more here than in class." Robert slumped into the chair. He looked at me and saw a solitary tear roll down. "You created a parallel world, and I didn't even see it." "You were too busy looking at your own navel, my son," I replied gently. "But there is still time to look out. Sophie is the future. If you want to be part of it, you will have to learn to respect who is building it alongside her." That was the turning point. There was no cinematic request for forgiveness on knees. Real life isn't a soap opera, but there was a change in posture. Robert took his daughter's drawings and began to look with genuine interest. Mark and James entered the room shortly after, called by Sarah. There, in that glass room, I saw the scene George, my husband, always dreamed of. The whole family gathered around work. But it took a stranger entering the family to teach what being a family truly is. Weeks later, we had a BBQ in my garden. This time, I didn't pay for the meat. They chipped in. James bought the steaks, complaining about the price. Mark brought the drinks. And Robert shockingly manned the grill. I was seated on the veranda on my wicker throne, watching. Sarah was by my side with her son, a polite boy who now had a scholarship at the same school as my grandchildren. "You did it, Mrs. Margaret," Sarah whispered, sipping juice. "They are tamed." I laughed heartily. "Not tamed, my dear. Educated. Late education hurts more, but it teaches." I looked at Robert, serving a plate for Sophie. They were laughing at some inside joke. The ice had broken. They weren't perfect. Far from it. They still liked luxury, still grumbled about hard work. But respect had returned. They knew the old lady on the veranda wasn't dead weight. She was the anchor preventing their boat from capsizing. "You know, Sarah," I began thoughtfully, "when I got sick, I asked God to take me. Thought my mission was over. Thought I had failed as a mother because I raised selfish sons." "You didn't fail. The world spoiled them." "Yes, but I discovered we always have time to fix things, or at least put on a strong patch, and I discovered something else." "What?" I took her hand. The hand that wiped my face when I was feverish. The hand that signed the checks that saved the company. "I discovered that blood isn't a choice, but loyalty is. You are my daughter of the soul, Sarah. And in my new will, the one Mr. Sterling kept in the bank vault." She tried to interrupt me, but I squeezed her hand. "In that will, 30% of the holding company is yours, forever, to ensure that even when I am gone, someone with a heart will be in command to prevent greed from destroying what we built." Sarah cried, not the cry of fear of the bank, but the cry of gratitude. "And my sons?" she asked. "They get the rest, on the condition that you continue as chair of the board. They will have to swallow you, my dear, or better, they will have to respect you." Evening fell softly. The smell of BBQ mixed with the scent of the night-blooming jasmine in the garden. Robert came to the veranda wiping his hands on his apron. He brought a plate with the best cuts of meat, sliced up just the way I like. "Mum, brought this for you. It's tender." He paused, looked at Sarah, and in a visible effort said, "Want me to bring a plate for you too, Sarah?" She and I exchanged a knowing look. "I'd like that, Robert." "Thank you," she said. He nodded and went back to the grill. I breathed in the pure night air deeply. I had beaten pneumonia, beaten betrayal, beaten helplessness. Many women of my age think life ends when dependency begins. They think they need to accept crumbs of attention from busy children. I tell you, do not accept it. We who built their world hold the keys to the kingdom. If they don't want to enter through the door of love, let them knock on the door of respect. And if neither opens, we change the lock. I looked at the starry sky. George must be laughing up there, seeing the organized mess I made. Life is too short to be the pitiful granny. I prefer to be Mrs. Margaret, the woman who transformed abandonment into an empire and a carer into a queen. And if one day I need care again, well, I know Sarah will be there. Not because I pay, but because I saw her, and she saw me. And in the end, being seen and valued is the only inheritance we take from this life. I closed my eyes, feeling the breeze and hearing the laughter of my grandchildren mixed with Sarah's commanding voice on the phone, solving one more problem. Everything was in its place.